Hi, I'm Bob Scanlan. Time to answer some HeyScan emails that came in tonight during the Padres' victory over the Arizona Diamondbacks. Question number one. Victor wants to know, hey Scan, I'm watching today's game with my son, and they started talking about Kirk Gibson's home run. And basically, Victor's question is, what happens if a batter hits a home run, but injures himself and can't make it all the way around the bases? Well, that's a pretty interesting question, and in fact, there's several rules that come into play. The first rule, 6.09D, which basically states once a batter hits a ball over a fence that's at least 250 feet away in fair territory, that is considered a home run, and now the batter is a base runner. Now, a base runner needs to complete the entire circuit around the bases to be credited with the run. So, what happens if a guy gets hurt and can't finish? Well, a couple of things. If he doesn't finish, first of all, the umpire has the right to call the runner out. It's not a judgment call. It's not an appeal play. The umpire calls the guy out if he cannot make it around the bases. But there's a couple things that you can do. First thing you can do is put in a pinch runner. So if the guy is able to make it past first base, because if he doesn't make it to first base at all, then again the umpire has to call him out. But if the batter, who is now a runner, can get to first base, at that point the team can put in a pinch runner, and that pinch runner can complete the circuit. Now, if that pinch runner breaks his ankle as he's heading towards second base, as long as he can get to the next base, once again, the team can put in another pinch runner, and that runner can complete the circuit. If a runner is assisted by anybody on his team, whether it be a coach or a player or anybody acting on behalf of the coaches or players, that runner will be called out. So nobody can help that runner if he breaks his ankle or his leg to get around the bases. He needs to be able at least to get to first base, and if he can do that, then they can put in a pinch runner. What's interesting is if they did do that, the pinch runner would get credited with the run scored, but the home run and the RBI would still be accredited to the original batter that hit the ball. Hope that answers your question, Victor. Appreciate it. Next is from Dennis. Dennis wants to know, hey, last night on the post game you stated that September call-ups, when the rosters get expanded, do get credit towards free agency and arbitration. Is this true? Because Dennis thinks that that's not necessarily the case. Actually, Dennis, that is the case. When the teams expand the rosters on September 1st, all the guys that they call up on those expanded rosters do get credit for service time. They get their pension service time. They get Major League service time in every respect. They are a Major League Baseball player at that point, and they get all the pension and service time that they're due at that point. That is one of the reasons that teams will think twice sometimes about calling a young player up, because that starts his time clock. So that can become a factor when he becomes a Super 2 free agent, or arbitration eligible player. And so teams will take that into account and think, look, this kid may be part of our future. If we call him up in September, all of a sudden he's going to have an extra 30 days of service time. That may become a factor 2 or 3 years from now when he's getting ready to go to arbitration or even possibly free agency. So it's certainly something that teams take into account because, yeah, the service clock starts to run even on those September call-up kids. Next question is from Dale. Hey, Dale wants to know, why does the patch, the American flag patch, on the right sleeve of the uniforms appear to be backwards? And basically, it's not backwards. It's on there properly. Of course, when you see an American flag on the left sleeve, it'll have the stars and stripes towards going forwards. And basically, that is exactly how the flag should always be displayed on a uniform, as though it is heading forward, as though it is going into battle. So for that to appear on the right sleeve, you would have to flip the flag around. It looks awkward, but basically the stars and stripes would be on the opposite side, because you still want it to appear as though the flag is being carried forward into battle. The American flag is never shown retreating from battle or going in the reverse direction. So that's why they have to flip the flag around on the sleeve so it appears to still be going forward. Last question tonight is basically about Chris Young. Tons of people still asking about Chris Young. A lot of talk about CY. In case you haven't heard, here's the latest update. As of today, August 25th, Chris Young scheduled to throw another simulated game in tomorrow's bullpen, according to Buddy Black. Everything's been going fine with all his rehabs. He is throwing all of his pitches during these simulated games, not throwing at 100% in terms of his velocity. Now, I asked Buddy, is he still trying to push himself? Is he trying to get that velocity up to where it needs to be? Buddy said yes, he is. So that's a good sign, because CY is apparently pushing himself and trying to get that velocity back up to game speed. and so far has had no setbacks in trying to do that. It's a great sign that he's throwing all his pitches. It's a great sign that he's been able to continue to throw, take a couple days off, and continue with the program with no bad side effects in between the outings. So that's all positive stuff. All that being said, Chris Young is still quite a ways away from being able to compete in a Major League Baseball game. He still needs to get that velocity and that game speed on his pitches up to where it needs to be able to compete. Is that something that can be accomplished before the end of the season? It appears to be, and I think the Padres and Chris are both hopeful that sometime in September he'll be able to help this ball club out. Now the next question that people have been asking is, if he is able to pitch, in what capacity would it be best? I personally think it would probably be best as a starter. If he's coming back from these shoulder issues, if you're working out of the bullpen, sometimes it can be a little taxing to have to try to get up quickly, and certainly without any rub down, stretching, all the stuff that as a starting pitcher you can do in preparation for your start that day. So it would seem to me to make more sense for Chris's health if he were to continue to do it as a starter, and that may be appropriate. They may be able to use Chris for a couple of starts towards the end of the season to give Matt Latos, Clayton Richard, and the rest of the pitching staff a little bit of rest. So we'll wait and see how that works out. The other question I get asked: will he be eligible for the postseason roster? Theoretically, yes, he will, as long as the guy's on the 40-man roster. There are ways of getting him onto the playoff roster, a lot of little tricks that get played. So even though he's not active as of August 31st, because he's on the 40-man roster, because he's on the disabled list, he would still be eligible at some point, probably to pitch in the postseason. But yeah, I think that's rather ambitious to think that Chris, having not pitched all season long, will be able to get himself up to game readiness and also be effective enough to be considered as a potential starter for the postseason. But who knows? Maybe he can do it. If he can, it certainly is a great step for Chris Young and this Padre ball club. So I'm sure all the Padre fans will keep their fingers crossed that he continues to progress. So that's the latest update on Chris Young. We'll try to keep you updated as often as possible. Appreciate you watching the show. Appreciate all the emails, and we'll keep trying to answer them as often as we can. Have a great evening.